This is a Final Word Cricket podcast. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon, season 13, episode 25.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, there's
I'll
a
take
lot
your
of
word for
episodes. We had story time 125 the other day. If you're watching on YouTube and you're relatively new to what we do, that would suggest that we've been making these podcasts for a really long time, and we have.
No, we have.
2015, if you want to go back and listen to season 1. Anyway, we're in Ahmedabad now, or Ahmedabad, I should say. The pronunciation is not as you would expect when you look at it on the page, but Ahmedabad, I'm told, is the way you say it in these parts.
You just got to sound as chilled out as possible. That's when you come here, you've got to be like, I'm on a banana lounge. That's how I'm saying the name of this city.
It'll do it. So we'll be at the Modi Stadium tomorrow, and we'll give our impressions of that then. This is known as the Manchester of the East, due to the cotton trade that was prolific here, either side of British rule, I should say. It kind of had that energy about the city beforehand, and since the turn of the century, by that I mean the century we're in at the moment, it's been a hub of commerce and construction, and the population's exploded to 9 million. It's one of the fastest growing cities in India, and one of the, I guess, really international megacities in this part of the world as well.
It's a big Gandhi spot as well, big Gandhi energy in this place. We drove past the Gandhi ashram, which was the centre of some of the organising of the protests and so on. So I've been doing my Gandhi homework today. I didn't know that he was 45 before he started getting down to business with sorting things out in India, because he'd spent 21 years in South Africa before that, trying to sort things out over there. And then, so it's... You'd imagine some sort of young tyro, just got the law degree, just ready to plough into the world and kick it in the nuts, but non-violently. And instead, he's like, no, he's pushing. He's got 50 on the horizon before he starts making a lot of problems for the British here. And good on him for doing it.
Yeah, I visited when I was in Pune in 2017, where he was imprisoned later in his life. I think that's like where the main Gandhi commemoration is in terms of the monuments and the collection. That's what I'm looking for, the main collection of his letters and all the rest of it. But I didn't know that he was so deep into his life when that was the case. So the focal point of our trip will be that $100 million stadium that was opened in, it was early 2020, wasn't it? Just before the pandemic, with Donald Trump in that huge rally they had there.
It's what Gandhi would have wanted.
Yes, yes, that's right. We probably should be careful with language we use about the Trump and Modi rally, but Sachin Tendulkar and Virat Kohli and all the rest of it. So we got here after our 7 a.m. flight this morning. There's two ways of getting to Ahmedabad from Indore. One is the early flight, the direct flight, which we're in the air for all of sort of 25 minutes.
Yeah.
The other way is getting a 12-hour train, where our colleagues Pete Lawler and Gideon Haig and Phil Long did that. So I think
probably
they made the
are
right
still
call.
doing that.
I think they've arrived since, but it was an overnight sleeper train, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and the good news, since we might have reported on this a few days ago, is that officially Australians can now get tickets to day one. There was a lot of conjecture around this, about the 85,000 people who are being shipped in for the sort of political side of things there on morning one with Modi there. But there is a booth that's been set up. You need to pay. You need to prove you're Australian to get the tickets. You need to have your Australian passport.
Right.
And then you need to pay in Indian currency. No foreign cards, as we're learning in these parts.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, I mean, that's pretty much par for the course. So is it like the weird stuff on the citizenship test where, like, what's Don Bradman's batting average?
Yeah, exactly.
Which, to be fair, or anybody in India would know that as well.
Yeah,
so that one's not going to... Maybe what are the 3 ingredients of a Lamington? It might catch a few out. Yeah,
the distinction between Vegemite and Marmite, or whatever it is. But you need to prove that you're Australian, and then you can get a ticket to day one.
They play you the first 2 lines of True Blue by John Williamson, and then you have to complete the verse.
How many rhyming couplets can you get right from True Blue?
Yeah.
Mum and Dad, is it a...
Which bird features in the second verse?
Is it standing by your... When he's in a...
there we go.
Is it Marmite? No, Vegemite.
No, Vegemite.
Not Promite.
Not Promite.
Not what I grew up in Endeavour Hills, where a lot of Croatians had their Promite. It's not that. It's Vegemite.
Yeah, and more like anti-mite. Yeah, not pro it at all.
The show we're making today will, again, if you're relatively new to the Final Word and you're watching the video, this video component will capture a conversation around the Women's Premier League, which started a couple of days ago. Then the podcast feed will go on to have a conversation around the Sheffield Shield, the penultimate round of that. We've seen the West Indies and South Africa duking it out in a low-scoring test match in Centurion. last week. There are other things
There's a long
happening, Jeff.
interview.
There's a long interview. Sorry, yes, that's what we're doing here today. We're talking to George Dobell around the Cricket Disciplinary Commission hearings that have been playing out in the UK over the last few days of last week and the first couple of days of this week. George Dobell from the Cricketer magazine has been leading the charge from a journalistic perspective on this for, well, a good couple of years now, working closely with Azim Rafiq. So we had a chat about, well, in the end, a lot of different things. I might wait till after that's played out before I give a few extra thoughts on that, because
Sure.
it was a conversation that sort of veered off course a couple of times in a good way, but George is so well thought out and considered on this topic that he was the right person to get on the show, and I think that's just about everything we have coming.
Yeah, it was. But so the point is, the video will stop after a little while because you don't want to sit there and watch an hour and a half of video. Probably most people. But if you want to hear the rest of the show, go to the audio pod feed and find it.
I think of it more as a teaser. If you're watching on video and you've been picking up our videos through the course of the Border Gavaskar series, you can get a sense of what the weekly show feels like. And we might even post the interview in full with George Dobell. But the point is, you can listen to the show multiple times per week on the podcast feed.
As a whole thing, as an entire, this is carving it up into component pieces. This is a deconstructed podcast. It's like where you get the slice of bread and the slice of cheese and the tub of butter, but they don't make the sandwich for you. Deconstructed sandwich.
Yeah, that's right. Or when you get the spaghetti bolognese, where it's all in different parts at a posh restaurant or something like that.
It's the veg thali of podcasts.
There you go, veg thali, which we'll be having at some point while I'm here. I'm pretty sure very soon. I think we might go out for a thali tonight with Bharat Sundaresan. He's working on that at the moment. The restaurant he recommended is far too far away from here, so we're trying to compromise and find where we're going to end up being for that. Now, the other thing I wanted to note is that there is a discrepancy in how big this Modi Stadium is.
Okay.
At one end of the ground, according to Dan Brettig's report today in The Age, at one end of the ground there's a plaque saying 130,000. At the other end of it, there's a plaque saying 110,000. We've been told more than 100,000 will be there due to the 85,000 who are being shipped in for day one. But it's a pretty big discrepancy, 110 compared to 130. We need to sort it out.
Particularly in the time it takes you to walk from one end of a stadium to another, albeit a large stadium.
Yes.
Nonetheless, the world hasn't changed that much in the time that it's taken you to walk from one end to that end. And it hasn't changed the other way when you walk back. So maybe they mean, maybe it's 130 if you cram all the standing room. I don't know. I mean, these kind of capacities, it's like the bullshit with the size of buildings, right? This building is going to be taller than this building because we put a giant radio aerial on the top. I mean, come on. So there's always some fudging around, like who's got the more impressive sounding numbers.
True, but from a Melbourne perspective, and we are here for Visit Melbourne and Visit Victoria, if it's 110, that's how many people were at Ed Sheeran the other night. I mean, they say this is the biggest stadium in the world. The MCG once hosted a game of football where 696 people were there, the 1970 grand final.
121,000?
121,000,
Okay.
696. What I'm steering towards is that my sense is our ground in Melbourne is bigger than their ground in Ahmedabad.
Well, let's see. We haven't been in the ground yet, but we'll let you know.
It's just a feeling I've got.
We'll cast a Melbourne eye over it tomorrow. Aren't there some US college grounds that are even bigger than that can take?
Well, I don't know. There's that ground in Pasadena that hosted the Women's Football World Cup in '99.
The Rose Bowl.
But I reckon we've got them covered in Melbourne. What I do know is that it's a historic stadium. It's the very first Test match was held there. So why wouldn't you want to visit Melbourne, watch Test cricket, watch the footy? It's an Olympic venue back in 1956 as well, the first Olympic venue in the Southern Hemisphere. So visit melbourne.com, visit Victoria, plan your Melbourne journey today.
The Women's IPL, or the WPL as they're calling it. I'm a little torn about, because in my head that's what it is. It is the women's version of the IPL, and so there should be a distinction there. But WPL doesn't necessarily make sense because Women's Premier League are what? You can't just be the Premier League of the world just because.
Doesn't really roll off the tongue. I think it was studiously, they avoided calling it the Women's IPL, is my sense.
Yeah.
Because there was so much pressure for so long to call it that. There's probably IP reasons as well, because the 10 IPL teams aren't all represented.
Yeah.
So, it would have been easier though, and it would have felt better. But Women's Premier League it is.
Well, it just means that no one else can have a Premier League. Maybe that was why. Maybe because everybody else who followed the IPL and called it the CPL, the BPL, every other acronym PL, pretty much everything except for the 100, the Blast, the Big Bash, has been a Premier League of some sort.
Yep.
The SA20, they dropped the T. They were like, no T for us, just straight into the 20s. So nomenclaturally speaking, maybe this is saying it doesn't matter, you can't make any other Premier Leagues. This is the only one.
Well, it's certainly got that status as the world event. I mean, you see the names who have played over the last couple of days. We mentioned the opener in the Daily yesterday, so we won't go over that again. But on Sunday afternoon, Delhi played RCB, so it is the Delhi Capitals, and it is the RCB that you know of from the IPL at Brabourne in Mumbai. And that was such a high-scoring first innings from Delhi. I mean, talk about a dynamic top four. Lanning, 72 from 43. Shafali Verma, 84 from 45. They put on 162 in just over 14 overs. Then to finish it off, Marizan Kat, 39 not out from 14 balls, and Jemima Rodriguez, 22 not out from 15 balls to get them up to 223 for 2. Mm-hmm. So we've seen 200 breached in both of the first two games. The veterans copped it with the ball for the RCB. So Shute went for 45 from 4. Ooh. Perry went for 29 from 3. Sophie Devine, 20 runs from 1 over, and Heather Knight picked up 2 wickets but conceded 40 runs from her 3. So they were up against it, the RCB, and they've got a slightly older bowling attack, and the Delhi Capitals look stacked.
And they've squeezed the ropes in a little further for this tournament as well, haven't they? Even more than usual. So that's probably contributing to the 200.
There have been a
scores.
lot of sixes hit. Yeah, that's true. And so there were in RCB's reply, but they just weren't quick enough. So Mandana 35, Knight 34, but they were going at strike rates that went anywhere near as high as the first innings. Megan Shute whacked 30 not out at the end, and Elise Perry 31. But yeah, they only finished on 163 for 8, so they get beaten comfortably. The real story out of this, though, was Tara Norris took 5 for 29, coming on at third change. She's the only associate player in the competition, out-and-out associate. There are some who have played in associate cricket, but she's the only one representing an associate nation right now. Had a bit to do with Tara, both at the Vipers and with the USA at Fair Break last year. She's a great story. She was born in Philadelphia. She grew up in Spain.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised. In the playground was where she spent most of her days.
Right near the Liberty Bell, I'm sure. She grew up in Spain.
Yep, Barcelona.
She played in the Sussex group system. There was a good little tweet from Hypercourse yesterday saying that as kids, Kim Garth, who we'll talk about in a minute, and Tara Norris played against each other in a Sussex versus Ireland game or something like that. She's been an excellent contributor for the Vipers in the regional setup in the last 2 years, especially in what would have been season 2, where she led the country in the left-arm seamer. She's not far away, actually, from being in consideration for playing for England. But a couple of years ago, she made the call, got the US passport. I'm going to play international cricket. I'm going to do this thing. And it's serving her well, getting one of these associate deals as part of the Women's Premier League and taking a 5 for it the first time of asking. Good stuff.
Well, and she could do both. She could use that well-worn pathway and go be an associate player who ends up playing for England. I mean, her parents are English. It's not like she grew up on a rifle range in Tennessee.
No, not at all.
Eating apple pie and all the rest of it. So it's by that fact that she was born in that country, she was able to get that residential qualification. But she's developed her cricket in England. She's essentially, if you hear her speak, she's English accented with a bit of an Australian twang in there from spending some time in Australia as well.
Oh, really? I didn't detect that last year.
There's a little bit. There are a few words where you go, hang on, and then you realise she's played club cricket. She's played local Melbourne cricket as well. She was a match winner in a final, I think, against Meg Lanning's team, Box Hill, when she was playing for Paran a few years ago. So she's been here, there and everywhere. What interested me the most, though, is that she played in the 2021 America's qualifier tournament when Brazil played Canada, when Laura Cardoso didn't take 5 wickets, took 3, and there were 2 run-outs, but there were 5 wickets in 5 balls for them to win a game by 1 run. For the Brazilians, but those are the only internationals that she's played for the USA. So why they have had some tournaments since, including the 50-over qualifier that got called off because of COVID when Thailand were probably going to qualify for the World Cup.
That's right.
But she didn't play in that. She hasn't played in other T20 stuff since 2021.
Rachel Hayhoe Flint commitment. So and with the The 100, I can't remember which exactly, but her commitment's in England where she's being paid a full-time wage. I mean, she's just going to have to splice them in when she's available. She did play in the fair break with Lauda. They both played for the Barmy Army team. I'm not sure if they're both playing this year in the tournament that starts in Hong Kong. Well, it starts in a month from now. I'll be over there doing that again. But yeah, it's cool that there is a role model there for American players coming through that, she's not of the American system. She's of the England system. But, it is possible to be an associate player who's off the radar a bit. She's not getting picked for England now.
But also massive trick missed by all the teams that didn't sign up an associate player because you can field them in addition to your 4 internationals. So why would you not give yourself the flexibility of somebody who might be able to contribute, even if they're not in your starting 11 for the first game? If you need to shake things up a bit, if someone's not playing so well, you've got that flexibility to bring someone in who doesn't have to be a local player if your local player isn't delivering.
Well, this is actually what Kim Garth did years ago in the Women's Big Bash League. Now, I don't remember the exact sequence.
Oh, that was more like a rookie. They had a kind of rookie contract.
Yeah, she was like I think she was an associate rookie. There were a few people who did that.
There were quite a few,
But she came in and won the opportunity. Was in the first team, then at the Sixers, and played in a couple of finals. And funny, I'm mentioning Kim Garth, who's now Australian qualified, a World Cup winner as of a week and a bit ago for being in the squad in South Africa. Well, she last night played in this thrilling contest between UP Warriors. I'm not a big fan of the Warriors with a Z on the end.
It's a little bit MSN Messenger, isn't it? It's a little bit. It's 1999. Maybe it's 2001. You're sending,
you don't need the Z on the end. I just don't think that's right. And they defeated Gujarat.
Sunglasses emoji.
So Gujarat got beaten by Mumbai a couple of nights ago to start the tournament. But this was a thriller. So Gujarat made 169 for 6. Harleen Diol, she of the brilliant catch at Northants a couple of years ago, 46. Ash Gardner, batting down at number 6, made 25 from 19. That's a waste of a resource if ever I've seen
Wouldn't do that when I've paid $500,000 for that.
Wouldn't at all. Deepty and Eccleston took cheap twofers, as you'd expect, 2 of the best finger spinners in the world. But then the chase was ostentatious. So the way it
Harris, more like Chase Harris.
Well, the way she did it too. So they ended up getting there with a ball to spare, but that does not tell the story whatsoever. It was Kiran Navgiri, who was an Indian T20 player last year. She made 53 from 43 to get them going, but no one else made runs. We forget when talking about the Women's Premier League that this is going to be a great opportunity for Indian women who aren't always on Broadway. They might have played a couple of games in the national team, but mostly are playing domestic cricket, just as it was in the Big Bash in Australia, the Kia Super League in England. This is the real magic dust of the Women's Premier League. It's not the internationals, who are great and all, but they're already on the circuit. They're already earning great money. It's the Indian women domestic players.
They're going to perform anyway.
Precisely. It's those who are trying to take the next step. So I was glad to see one of those in there making a half century. But everyone misses out. Healy, 7. McGrath, Golden Duck. 2, Kim Garth, who is on a roll. So she's playing for Gujarat, and she goes on to take Pfeiffer, former Ireland international, before Grace Harris walks in at number 6. Now, press fast forward. It was 105 for 7 in the 16th over. Grace Harris batting with the bowlers. By the end of the 19th over, they've got it up to 151 for 7. They need 19 runs from the final over. And Grace Harris, who only won a World Cup last week herself, goes against her Australian teammate
against the runner play,
Annabelle Sutherland, hits a 6 over mid-wicket. Then there's a wide where Sophie Eccleston nearly gets run out, dropping her bat. The ball after that, I think it was for a couple. Another wide, a 4 down the ground, a 4 to move her to 50 from the 4th legal delivery of the over. And suddenly, they only need 1 run to win with 2 balls to go. And what does Grace Harris do? Pings another glorious 6 to finish the game and send them 6 beyond their victory target. And she finishes with 59 not out from 26 balls.
It's such a Grace Harris thing to do as well. Why look for the single when you could hit it for 6 with 2 balls to go, meaning that if you get out, someone else has to come in and face 1 ball and try to score from
Exactly. And Sutherland, though, she went from having figures of 1 for 16 from 3 to 1 for 41 from 3.5, conceding 25 runs in 5 legal deliveries to lose the game. So the Gujarat have lost both, and the Warriors, via Grace Harris, are on the board in their first game.
Well, she didn't get to play in the World Cup. Sutherland wasn't, so maybe just a little bit of rust, you might be able to say. So look, it's up and running. It's fun. People are watching it. It's on the screens here. We're seeing promotion for it different places where we go around India. So looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, me too. Senior commentators been out there. I think it was important that Harsha Bogle was there, kind of comparing the first couple of games. It just kind of that symbol that that isn't always the way with women's cricket, but they've made the call that a big high-profile name and serious commentators are going to be there throughout the course of the next 3.5 weeks.
Yeah. So it's to show the amount of respect that
exactly
it needs to have for the people who haven't been following it and who haven't been anticipating it. Now it's suddenly here.
If you want to continue listening to the Final Word Weekly podcast, as we mentioned before at the top of the show, all you need to do is, I was going to say download the app.
No.
All you need to do is,
you've already got
hit
it.
subscribe. You've got the podcast
You've got
app.
a podcast app on your phone.
Or you've got Spotify, or you've got some other way of doing it. Hit subscribe. Find us on Final Word Cricket, and you can watch watch one of our videos. You're already there on YouTube. You can listen to all of the podcasts that we make, and believe me, there are plenty of them.
Okay.